Welcome to the Grief and Belief podcast, where we share stories of hope. Thank you for joining us. We hope this powerful story will help you feel God's love for you today.
Welcome to another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. I'm David Mickelson.
I'm Kori Andrews.
And we are really excited for this next interview that we have. We haven't known Caitlin Naulu for a very long time, but boy, it's been fun to get to know her and to prep for this interview and to hear her experiences. And we have a really good episode today to talk about.
Yeah, I was just telling you both that from our conversation a couple days ago, I've already implemented some of the things that we talked about. And so I'm so excited for our audience to hear some of these insights that you're going to have specifically on prayer that I think will be awesome. And so thank you for listening.
Yep. So Caitlin's going to talk to us, like Kori mentioned, about prayer and also about her sweet daughter, Auni, who we've loved to hear stories about. And so, Caitlin, would you mind introducing yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about you and your family?
Of course, yeah. So I'm Caitlin Naulu. I grew up here in Spanish Fork, Utah County, from a wonderful family, like salt of the earth parents, just very great examples of kindness, hard work, honesty, service. And I have two sisters. I'm right in the middle, so I've got an older sister, and she's my best friend still to this day, Jess. And then I had a younger sister with special needs, Kelsey, and she passed away back in 2020, but she was the most incredible sister too. Such an honor to grow up with her. She was the center and rock of our family. And we had a great childhood with softball and making Kelsey laugh in all the ways and just enjoying the simple things in life together. I then met Dallin, and it was like your typical freshman with braces in the stands, obsessed with this beautiful man on the basketball court. And we were just really good friends through high school. We actually dated each other's friends a little bit in high school and then just remained friends, really good friends throughout it all. And then when he got home from his mission in India is when we first started dating, kind of went out of the friend zone, and it became more, which was a good foundation to start a relationship on, just really good friends and knew each other well. And then we went for schooling, he went into plant science to be a golf course superintendent and got his dream job of being the superintendent here at our home golf course and loves it. And then I went into special education because I've always been so passionate about that with my sister and was just always involved with it growing up. And I taught for 1 year and then was actually led to the current company that I work for now. It'll be 7 years in October, doing payroll, insurance, and tax. So I manage the tax department there. We have 3 beautiful children. Auni, who we'll talk a lot about today, she would be turning 12 this year. And then Rook, who is 6, and Lonnie, but we call her Lo, who is 3. And they're literally the best children. Yeah. I love them so much. Awesome. So that's a little bit about us and me, I guess, my family.
A beautiful family.
Could you tell us a little more about your sister? Kelsey, was it?
Of course, yeah, Kelsey. So when she was 2 months old, got bacterial meningitis. So she was healthy at birth. And it just progressed. And by the time they got her to the hospital, it became super emergent, like an emergency situation. And she was life-flighted. They almost lost her a few times. And then she just had a lot of brain damage from going too long without oxygen. And so they didn't know long-term what that was going to look like, as far as what she would be able to do. We always just joked that she was just our big baby because she could whine and cry and laugh, and she never got out of diapers and was always in a wheelchair or stroller and was so happy and the best gal. I always joked, Adam's family and Liar Liar. So Adam's family is the weird hand that walks around, and Liar Liar, he does the claw. Yeah. And she just loved that. Yeah. Loved when you would do that with your hand. So we would do everything we could, always just acting like fools, making her laugh, and it was the best. Yeah.
And how old was she when she passed away?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Let's think about this. Sorry. So she was born in 95 and then passed away in 2020. Okay. So I think right before her 25th birthday, right? Wow. Is my math right? Yeah. It was actually right before COVID. So it was a huge blessing because we were able to spend time together in the hospital, all of us, for that week that she was in the hospital. And then we're able to actually have, a funeral with all of our loved ones there.
Especially that early part of COVID where that was all.
And it was a week later, everything shut down, a week after she passed away. So hindsight, that was a humongous blessing that we were able to have and spend all that time together with
I
her.
imagine we could do another full episode.
Yes, there's
her.
a lot there
Yeah.
with Kelsey and just the blessing and that she is was to everyone. You know, just wonderful spirit. I love her so much. I miss her so much.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing about her. And
of course.
That's awesome.
Would you tell us some stories about Auni? Help us get to know Auni.
Yes, Auni was the best. From the moment she was born, just so calm, so happy, just content. And I don't know, she obviously was so little, but just truly happy to be anywhere with anyone, to do anything. She was so resilient. Kids are more than we think, but as she navigated so many things, she always rebounded quickly, even if it was scary and big, at the hospitals. But she was such a sweet spirit, always babbling or spitting. That's what I would wake up to in the morning, just even with her BiPAP. Those mornings later, I would just hear in there spitting, making bubbles just for fun, and just babbling. But she just was sunshine here, like on earth. Like it just, I feel like that is what her spirit was, and everyone kind of felt that. Yeah. And so it was just an honor to be her mom.
I remember you telling me that you were pretty young when you got pregnant with her. What's kind of the story about her coming into this world?
Yes. So we were very young, and we were prepared to not have kids for quite a while. And Heavenly Father was like, I think the plan's a little different than that. Yep. So we had just kind of been feeling that urge to just having that thought, essentially, right? That like maybe it's time to start our family planning. And so we actually knelt in prayer eventually about it, because that felt reckless to me and my planner prepared cautious self, that we are so young and we're both working and going to school and we're so broke and here we go. I think we have time to wait. But we actually knelt in prayer, and that was one of the first in my life, I would say, very powerful spiritual experiences where I received like a very strong answer that you couldn't negate. And I remember ending the prayer and looking at Dal, just like, did you feel that? And he was just like, yeah. But it wasn't as shocking to him because he was pretty used to it, I think, or was less rare for him. But anyway, so then we moved forward with that. It took us about 9 months to get pregnant with her, and we were so excited. So excited. It was, very fun and stressful, but but it was great. And then everything went great with the pregnancy and everything like that. And then, I guess, I don't know, this might naturally lead into her story, so I don't know if you just want me to go with that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Everything went great with the pregnancy. I did have a little bit of preterm labor, but other than that, it was good. And I knew I would have to have a scheduled C-section due to just some anatomical things that I wasn't able to deliver normally. So I went into labor. I remember my water broke at the preschool when I was at work, and then we went to the hospital, and then she was delivered via C-section, and they did have some struggles getting her out, so she had a little bit of bruising on her face. But other than that, she was just this healthy, beautiful girl, and passed all of her newborn tests and screenings with flying colors. And I will never forget that moment when they lifted her up in that OR, and just me just starting to sob to where I could barely breathe very well, because I just was like, that's our baby.
She's so beautiful.
That's ours. We made her.
Yes.
Yeah. Just straight from heaven.
So
and I remember the anesthesiologist, he had really dry humor, saying some kind of joke behind me of just me crying. And I think he thought I was in pain or something. And I was like, oh no, I'm this is all happy tears for that beautiful baby girl right there. Wow. So they did, Dal took her with the nurse, and they went somewhere until my C-section was all finished, and then we met back up in a different room later. But that was just your typical whirlwind newborn fog craziness of just trying to figure out how do we take care of this human that needs us, and there's no instruction manual for this. But it was very tiring, but great. So we just embraced that. And after I had her, I put work on pause. I was working in the preschool, so I stopped work, but I kept going with school, and Dal kept going with work in school. And then about when she was 3 or 4 months old, we noticed she didn't move a lot, or she just wasn't very strong. Just minor things that we brought up to her pediatrician at one of her well checks. And he agreed, and so he referred us to a pediatric physical therapist. So we went, that was, let's say she was about 4 months, I think, and we went to him for the next 2 months, and there wasn't really a lot of improvement. And we didn't really have a gauge of what she should be doing because
your
no
first
one
kid.
else around us really had babies. And Dal's one sibling that did, they lived up in Salt Lake. And so we didn't really have any comparison as far as milestones. I feel like we probably would have noticed a lot sooner, either if we had a healthy child first or were around another healthy child. So then after going to him, he then referred us to Utah Neuro Rehab up in Murray. And that's when they decided to do a muscle test and just kind of essentially I think it was an EMG is what we think we just discovered.
Yeah. And I'm like, what's a muscle test for a baby? Like, I could just picture a baby under like a bench press. Let's see how much they can lift.
Yeah. And forgive me, I don't remember all the like correct terms now.
Sure.
It's been a while. But they do put her under anesthesia, and I feel like it involves needles, but essentially they would poke them in the muscles and see how they react or how they fire.
Yep.
And that gave them information of kind of the goal of it, I think, was to see if it was related to her brain, like upper motor neuron, or her spine, which is lower motor neuron. And through that test, they discovered that it was lower motor neuron, is what they told us, and then referred us from there to a more specialized pediatric neurologist. And so following that test, we just waited for that next appointment and went up there to that appointment. And this doctor was the best. She was so sweet. But we went into that appointment expecting just what other additional tests were going to come. We kind of figured out the fork in the road, which direction we needed to go. And then from there, it sounded like there was going to be more tests. So when we showed up to that appointment, we did not expect that was when we were going to receive her diagnosis. So I always cry when I talk about this, but it's one of those memories that comes back so vividly. I remember what I was wearing. I remember the room. I remember the doctor, and time just seemed to slow after I heard her say the words. I'm 99% sure she has spinal muscular atrophy. And with that, I do want to mention prior to this, when she was 6 months old, when we were referred from the physical therapist for some tests to go to Utah Neuro Rehab, we had Googled one night, which I don't recommend. And I think we put in something like a 6-month-old who can't bear weight on their legs. And we discovered like a past forum where parents had been sending messages back and forth. And that's where we first saw that name or that diagnosis, the spinal muscular atrophy. And all of the comments were saying, when their child passed away or when their child gained their angel wings. And so I remember shutting the laptop and just we were like, we're not going to go there till we're there. Like, it definitely frightened us, but we were just like, let's not worry about that until we know that is what it is.
It's worst case scenario.
A worst case scenario, right? It's just like,
so
why ruin now with the fear of that
Right.
if it may not be the case? So when she said those words, the only thing we knew was it's terminal. Like, all those parents that had children with this, they lost their children.
Yeah.
And so other than that, we had no context or information of like what that meant and how. And anyway, and you could tell she had done some researching too, because it is a rare disease, but it is one of the more common rare diseases. So she wasn't super informed, but she had tried to get as much information as she could. And she got emotional telling us, obviously, which I can imagine that would be very difficult to relay that information to these young parents that, I think I was 21 and Dal was 23, so we were really young. But she kind of gave us some minor information and then gave us some time and said, I'll be back in a few minutes, and I want to give you some time and space to kind of process, and if you have any questions, like, I'm here to help you. And so she walked out and came back in, and then after that, she kind of gave us kind of some rough details with the prognosis of just essentially this kind of creates fatal muscle weakness is the way to describe it. So with SMA, they're missing the SMN1 gene, and they have 0 copies. I, as a carrier, have 1 copy of that gene, and obviously a person that's unaffected would have 2 copies. And that gene produces the protein necessary for the nerves between the spine and the muscles. So without that protein, those nerves don't function as they should, and then the muscles atrophy. And then obviously muscles are required for everything we do. So it affects everything.
So was she moving a little bit, and because these genes and things weren't working quite right, it was going to deteriorate over time? Is that kind of something's working a little bit, but it's not going to continue to build as she grows. And is that kind of the idea?
Yes. So like at birth, she passed all of those APGAR scores because she did have some strength at that point. So she had SMA type 1 or spinal muscular atrophy type 1. And the type is kind of refers to the onset or the highest milestone reached. And she was she was a stronger type 1. So it's not there's not technically a type 0, but if they are type 0, they're kind of, it's a horrible word, kind of, but floppy at birth. They don't have strength at birth, and it's noticeable once they're born. Yeah. So she had strength then, and then from there, it just slowly weakens. Okay. And so she was able to hold her head up independently. She did learn that and was able to conquer that, but she never sat independently or was able to crawl or anything like that. And I still have those videos of when I'd be feeding her in her little bumbo chair or her height chair when she could hold it, but then it would we'd call them timber moments when her head would fall and she couldn't get it back up. So we'd kind of have to lift it up for her and she could keep it straight, but she just would
once
get
it
stuck.
Started,
Yeah. And also, I mean, big noggins running the family, so it was probably pretty heavy to hold up. But remind me again where I was. I forgot where I was.
So you'd received the diagnosis, and she'd kind of told you a little bit, like, what was the future going to hold for
There we go.
Guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the atrophy happens slow after birth. And that's, And so then she told us that there's no treatment or cure for it, but there are medical interventions that could help assist her and help her quality of life and her comfort, and kind of said with those interventions she could live as long as 4 or 5 is what we were initially told in that appointment. So we wrapped up that appointment and obviously left very solemn and overwhelmed. And
just thinking like the drive home, what the drive home actually looks like. Yeah.
And I was sitting in the back seat next to her, just her happy Auni self, just so happy. And we drove home just in silence, just so shocked. And I remember family were reaching out and texting us and just asking for updates and how the appointment went, and us not responding. I think they all kind of knew something wasn't right. And so we drove to our parents' house and told each of them. And that is those memories will stick with me forever. Like, it was just really hard. It was July 18th, which is Dal's parents' anniversary.
And my birthday.
Oh, okay. Connection there. And I will never forget telling my parents and having my dad hold me. Just this big old burly loving man, just shaking, from sobbing. Just, that one get ya. So it was very emotional and just a lot, obviously. And we still had a lot of questions. We just had that initial information from the appointment that we relayed to them. And at that appointment, she said it's urgent that you get up to a pulmonologist, which is a lung doctor. Breathing is the highest concern. As they weaken, we need to make sure she has the appropriate support. So she had called up to Primary Children's and got us an appointment for that following Monday. So we were there on a Friday is when she was diagnosed. So that following Monday, she scheduled appointments at Primary Children's with the pulmonologist and a palliative care team, which includes like a social worker, nurses, doctors, just kind of a panel to have kind of the difficult conversations with you and answer your questions and give you in-depth answers of what this means and what it looks like. And so we were introduced to a breathing treatment, which would be her usual treatment that we would have to give her preventative for her lungs, to keep them clear morning and night. And if she were to get sick with any type of cold or respiratory infection, we would have to increase that to every 4 hours around the clock to help her get that out. Because obviously with weakness, she can't cough well and clear all of that out of her lungs. So then it becomes urgent quickly. And then we met with the palliative care team. And that's another memory that will just be hard, sitting on this side of the table, holding Auni on my lap, just happy as ever, looking around the room and talking to them about, and they were so loving, but just like, we're here to have the hard conversations now while she's still okay. You're not in an emergency situation sitting in the next to the bed in a room having to make a very large judgment call that you feel ill-prepared for. And so just kind of asked about her, our goals for her, what interventions there were, which included a G-tube for feeding to help, because they will aspirate their food because they can't
Probably hard to swallow.
swallow
Yeah.
very well. Same thing with their secretions. They tend to lay flat because it's easier, and a suction machine to help with that. And eventually that breathing would become difficult and she wouldn't be able to do that on her own. And so you would start with a BiPAP machine, which went over her nose and forced the, air in and out and just kind of let her body have a break so it didn't have to work so hard. And then when you get to the point that you're on a BiPAP all the time, it's then the next course of action for breathing anyway would be like a trach on a ventilator that breathes for them essentially. And I guess a key thing to also know is neurologically they develop, normally. So like her brain is unaffected. So she would become aware, and would learn, as she got older. It was just kind of all the physical limitations that SMA created. So that was very overwhelming. I remember getting home from that evening, and we had got her all settled for bed, and just Dal had to run into work to deal with the irrigation system, make sure the water was on and sprinklers were figured out. And I just remember laying down on the bed, just trying to process what had just occurred and what was coming, and then as we learned more, the true statistics for SMA are type 1 is 50% of children don't make it to see their first birthday, 90% don't make it to see their second, just with how fast the atrophy happens. And so that initial 4 to 5 years, I think it gave us hope, but I don't know how realistic that was. But we did, she was stronger and was doing awesome, so we really thought she would, break that statistic.
Yeah. So talk through to me, I'm just picturing you having this news, knowing our time is limited with Auni. How limited, we don't really know. But if she's 6 months, then maybe another 6 months. Can you maybe just talk through how you felt about this balance of her passing away at some point, but also wanting to live life and not jump to that conclusion or live in that moment when it hasn't come yet?
Right. And that is what was so hard to navigate. Dallin, my husband, was much better at just I'm not wasting any of my time and energy of fear of when it's going to happen. I'm sure that it definitely existed for him inside, but he was much better at just totally being present and celebrating all the things present. Where that definitely was just this cloud that followed us around, and this fear of just when is the end going to come? What's it going to look like? Is it going to be an emergency situation? Are we going to be in a public place and people are around? Is it going to be in an ambulance? Is it, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And after diagnosis, you get connected with we got connected with the SMA community, with parents that have children with SMA, which is huge and amazing. And there's a foundation, and they send you a care package with things that are helpful, toys that are light, a pillow for the bath that they lay on, and all of these beautiful things. Mm-hmm. But with that also came knowledge of things they went through. A family going through all the work to take their child with SMA to Disneyland and having an emergency situation happen on one of the rides where she stopped breathing. And that unlocked a fear I didn't know I needed to worry about. Yeah. So it came with blessings, and it also was hard to see what other families were going through with their children as well. But it definitely very quickly, I don't know how to, best word it, but just forces you to focus on what's actually important. Mm-hmm. You celebrate all of the little things because they're not little things, they're big things, but they seem so little. Just being together, being outside. I still remember we lived in this little fourplex that had been renovated inside, but when people came over, they were just do they really live here? It was a little questionable, the outside. Mm-hmm. But I remember one night while we lived there, we took her off her pulse ox, which we always had her attached to the pulse ox so we could manage her oxygen and heart rate at all times. So we had disconnected her from that and taken her out and laid her on a blanket on the grass. And we were just sitting there, and it just it kind of sprinkled a little bit, but nothing crazy. It just smelled really good and was beautiful outside. And it was just this moment of just this is everything. She's not connected to any cords, no machines. We're out here together, just enjoying time together. And it's little stuff like that it's just we didn't take stuff for granted. We celebrated all the little things. If it took us so much time to get her in a wetsuit to put her in this pool and have Auni swim for a minute, even if it was like we had to give her multiple breathing treatments to try to help clear things out after and get her settled. It was so stressful, but it was always worth it. We always were trying to do the things to have her have access to the just what kids do, but obviously adapted as needed. Yeah. But it definitely quickly put things in perspective of the things that don't matter, Yeah. Which is just... It's hard because, life is busy and we think these things matter. And then when your time's limited and you don't know how much time you have left, like you spend all the time you can, but also you appreciate what the time looks like. It can be so simple, but like so beautiful.
And the most important things, like family, like time, like, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Now, how did it go as you got closer to that point where you knew that it was going to happen, and how did it happen?
Yeah, so we did pretty good at keeping her healthy. That was a hard aspect of just, I think people were fearful of coming over because germs are everywhere. And obviously people aren't scared of colds. Normally it's kind of a nuisance, but people aren't fearful of them. Where that fear was very real in our home because it was her life on the line if she ever got sick. And so, people were nervous to come over. And if they did, just kind of didn't want to get too close. Yeah. And so... that's
social distancing before it was a real thing.
Correct, yeah. And it was just like even going to the grocery store late at night when she's asleep and Dal's home finally for the day, someone coughing near me, just being like, and wanting to like bathe yourself in Lysol or hand sanitizer when you get home and just make sure that you're covered. So, I guess the time, it kind of just, that was another hard thing is as she weakens, like another medical intervention is needed, right? And that transition was always very difficult. I'm grateful looking back, it was like kind of one at a time a little bit, so it made it a little more digestible, but it definitely was an adjustment. We eventually just had this little IKEA cart that just had all the things, all of her little medical interventions in it. And we got down pretty good. And then it was April of 2015, so she was about a year and a half at this point, and she got sick with something. And so we increased her breathing treatments to every 4 hours, and we had brought her out to the living room, and we were all out there together. And it got to the point that we knew she needed to go to the hospital, but she couldn't be without her BiPAP, with that breathing support. And we didn't have a way in one of our vehicles to keep it powered because it didn't have a battery. And so we didn't know how to make the drive up to Salt Lake. And so I had called the non-emergency number saying, we need an ambulance, but just for transportation. She is stable, but we do need to go to Primary Children's, and I don't have a way to get her there on my own. And so they came, and we call that still to this day Auni's Joyride in the ambulance. The sweetest ladies were there. My sister lived 2 blocks away with me at that point, and she saw the ambulance drive by, and she just knew that it was for Auni, so she ran over. But miraculously, somehow she didn't even need her BiPAP the whole way up there. Like, I don't understand. But that led to just a very stressful 2 weeks. Still to this day, some of the most traumatic, or 2 of the most traumatic weeks of my life. It was a lot. It was a lot to learn. The ICU is a difficult place. You're so grateful for it. But having other children around her room also pass away, and just witnessing different scenes like that, it rocks you in a different way. And her care was a lot. And so then trying to relay that to the nurse that changes every so often and night and day, and not getting those same nurses back, it felt pretty suffocating to just that someone had to be there at all times. And just to make sure, I'm so sorry.
No, you're totally
fine. So it was very difficult to just be in the ICU and to see other children going through hardships and losing other children in the neighboring rooms and things like that. And her care was so much, and us having to be there 24/7 just to make sure that everything was good. We were also transitioning her from breast milk to another liquid diet, which is a big transition. With digestion with them is difficult. And so we had to make what we would call these concoctions between the two in different levels and do her feeds that way. And it was a lot. And we got to the point that we had to make a call, essentially, of we've got to intubate her. Like, if this doesn't improve.
Next preventative, or next, I can't remember what you keep calling
like
it.
Her BiPAP is maxed out and she's on oxygen and it's not like it's barely doing enough, and so we need to intubate her. And the fear of intubation with kids with SMA is we can never extubate them and have them breathe alone on their own, and then at that point it's a ventilator and a trach. And that is where, when we spoke with the Rainbow kids, you know, the palliative care, our goal was to keep her home as much as possible instead of the hospital. And with a trach, you're naturally in the hospital more often, and that's not what we wanted for her or for our family. We wanted to be as home as much as possible. And our prayers, the prayers of everyone on behalf of us, she did turn a corner during that ICU stay. It was just like, okay, the respiratory therapist came in and said, let's do one more really good breathing treatment and kind of see where she's at that point. And that was the corner of where she turned. And so we were able to not have to make that call to intubate her. And so she did make it out of there, and it was the happiest day ever, wheeling her out in that wagon out to the car to take her home. And it did take her quite a few months to kind of rebound to a baseline, you know, from that and recover from that respiratory distress. But we learned so much during that ICU stay. We also learned about, just got in contact with hospice, of just knowing that was there, who to contact, and if and when we needed to use that service, it was kind of already lined up. Like, we didn't have to sort that all out. And hindsight, that was a huge blessing. So that was in April. And then Dal finished up school that summer and graduated in August, and I took her up to Logan, to Utah State, for him to walk, and that was really special. A lot of work to take her up there and keep her overnight, but again, celebrating those simple things, just so exciting just for us to be there in person to celebrate Dal graduating. And then that following September is where she got sick with something, and it came on so fast. And a fear we all carried was that someone around us would be sick with something and get her sick and carry the guilt of that, even though germs are everywhere and it's no one's fault. That was a fear we all carried. I didn't want anyone to ever feel, you know what I mean, any guilt or like it was their fault. And so it was a huge blessing that no one around us was sick. And so I still to this day don't know where she caught it, but it came on so fast. And I started to spiral and just like became so anxious and fearful with it all. And I remember I walked out of Auni's room into my room and just was sitting on the bed, just reeling and so scared that this was all happening. And I just remember him coming in and kneeling and looking at me and just like, Kate, I need you. Like, you got to stick with me. We got to do this together. I need you. And we were kind of forced in that moment that we had to wrestle with, are we going to take her to primary children's and fight this? Or do we call hospice and make her comfortable? And that felt like a decision that I could not make. I'm not capable of making that decision, just like I felt in the ICU. These decisions aren't mine. It's regarding this beautiful daughter of mine who I love so much, that it's her comfort. It's her comfort. It's her life. Like, that's beyond me. And so I will never forget just kneeling in prayer of just like never wanting anything more in my life than to just know, like, what's your will? What am I supposed to do here? What's right for Auni? And as soon as I knelt down, I was totally overcome and washed over by just such peace and love. Like, I don't even know if there's words that cover what I felt. And I just knew without a doubt that it wasn't what I wanted, but the answer was hospice and to make her comfortable, and that it was time. And it took Dal a little bit longer. Hindsight, and I think even in the moment, he just like, I'm not ready for the answer. I'm not praying. And he eventually knelt down and said a prayer himself as well, and had the same experience. And his change of heart after that prayer was very visible. And we both knew and were able to proceed with confidence that just that's what needed to happen. And so we contacted hospice and had them come and just make her comfortable and make sure she wasn't in pain and supported. So she was pretty sleepy, but it allowed those 2 days for family members to come over and spend time with us and to say bye to her. And it was very beautiful that way. And then it got to the point that we were going to just remove her breathing support that had gotten there. And that was really hard and was not something that maybe you expect will be peaceful or quick, and it was neither. But I held her to the very end. And I remember in those moments even just praying, like, just, like, let her go. Like, let her know, like, it's okay
No
if she
suffering,
goes.
just-
Like, and I just, like, it was just drawing out, it felt like. But then she did pass away, and there was a lot in that room. Everyone kind of brought in stools and stuff, and they were all around her bed in her bedroom. And of course it was so emotional, but there were laughs and memories and just this very special spirit there as we got her dressed and ready for the mortuary to come and pick her up. And that was just a really sacred time together as a family in that room. And then we called the mortuary, and that was extremely difficult. He was so kind. But I just remember carrying her out, and I just couldn't kiss her enough. I just kept kissing her forehead and kissing her cheek. And I finally put her in the back of the van and stepped away. And he closed the door. And then as he pulled out, me and Dallin sat on the porch swing on our patio right there. And I remember pulling out the baby monitor that I normally had facing her pulse ox machine at all times, just out of habit, to check her numbers and make sure she was okay. And in that moment, being halted of just like, oh, there's no numbers to check. Like, that's not a thing that I need to track anymore. And then Dallas, we had asked, once we were going to remove breathing support, we had asked everyone to leave. And I'm so grateful that Dallas' dad is in tune, because he negated that ask, and he said, I will not let you guys come back into this house empty and dark and alone. So him and my sister were in there, my older sister Jess, and I'm so grateful to them to this day that they were there, that we walked in and we were alone in that house that was dark and quiet. And I remember talking about the funeral stuff a little bit. He had dropped off the paper, and I remember in that moment they had kind of, Jess had opened the folder, or me, but I feel like they pointed out, because of her age, it's like they take care of a lot of the costs. Like it's a lot cheaper that way to do a funeral for, since she was so young. Anyway, a random thought, but I didn't know that, obviously. So we had talked a little bit that night about that, and then just kind of when we tentatively wanted to plan her funeral, and then they left for the night. But then goes the whirlwind of just, you're in shock and you're, I don't know, going through the motions. It's like you're busy planning her funeral, and that probably has all sorts of miracles in it of itself. My friend and her sister-in-law went crazy and planned majority of it, and obviously, included me in it and consulted me with all the things, but they did the heavy lifting, and she has her own experience with the miracles of the things that just fell into place when it didn't make sense for them to work out, and it worked out to have her service be perfect.
There's always this whirlwind that happens as soon as somebody passes away, that there's phone calls and visitors and text messages and planning, and at least for my experience, was kind of like, not that my grief was placed on hold, but I kind of rallied, like, we have to get this stuff done, so I can't sit and cry like I want to, or I do at the end of the day when everybody's gone and it's calm, right?
Yes, for sure.
What was it like for you kind of after that part, when things had calmed down and the messages kind of were less frequent? Talk about maybe how you felt or how you grieved once the letdown came back.
Yeah, that I talk about that time. I kind of always refer to it as like when the shock and the dust settles and people go back to their lives, and you're met with this new reality you never wanted, and this new normal that you have to figure out how to live with. And that's when you're just like, it almost feels like a crime that the world just goes back on like its normal flow, and you're over here with your shattered life and you don't know what to do. And for me, I was all Auni, because that's what I didn't mention too. After her diagnosis, I did have the thought, or the prompting from Heavenly Father, to put school on hold, because I was pretty close, so I was just going to push through. But hindsight, that was a huge blessing, because that was really the only year I had with Auni. So if I would have been distracted with school during that, I think that would not have been good. I was able to just give everything to Auni for that short time that we had her. So yeah, when the dust settled and things, and I would say it was probably even a little more delayed for me, I remember just being like, I have to do something. Like, and nothing can fill this time, but I have to do something. So I think I got a job at a local elementary school, doing a reading program. And I remember it was just that. It was kind of, you're numb, you're in shock, you're going through the motions. And about 3 months later, it was kind of December-ish, I think, it all kind of crumbled. And I was like, this was too soon. Like, sorry, I can't keep working. And then I was in this limbo. I couldn't start I couldn't start school yet. Work was too soon. So then I was just at home, you know.
With your thoughts, with your...
All of it, yeah. And Dal obviously had work, and that was a good outlet and a good thing for him to turn to and kind of lose himself in. But yeah, it was hard. It was lonely. It was unknown, unexpected. My social anxiety was wild. I just wanted to hide away in my house from everyone.
What did you think about, or what were you thinking about, or what were you grieving at that point? Or what did you miss?
Yeah, I guess nothing seemed important because Auni was everything, and she was so important. And that's what I had given my everything to. So it was just like anything that could fill that time felt like a waste of time, and it wasn't important. And also, what's my purpose? Like, I loved having the purpose of a mom. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom as long as I could remember when I was young. And I got that, granted with the side full-time job of medical, with her diagnosis.
Home nurse.
And so it was so busy. Yeah. And so to just have no purpose, it felt like I'm broken. I'm not stable enough to, like, go do things right now. But, like, what's my purpose? Like, I'm literally just a sitting duck that's grieving and broken, and I don't know what to do here. And what's hard is just, like, that's kind of just what existed until you slowly kind of work your way out of that, I guess. I guess there was the phase where we never wanted to be home. So we were never home shortly after she passed away because of the memories and the trauma that had existed there. And then there was the phase where I do think I was gone a lot even during that time, but I do remember, like, not being able to sleep, so I would stay up super late, and then with that would have to sleep in. So it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't make any commitment before noon. That's just not something that can exist because I'm going to bed at like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. or something. Yeah. So it was hard, and I am naturally a person that, like, doesn't ask for help very well. It doesn't, like, I didn't talk about my emotions very well. So, I mean, it definitely got to the point that Dal was like, I think maybe, like, we should go see a counselor or something. Like, let's try to do something actionable. So we did meet with a grief counselor, and that was very helpful. I think it gave me the avenue to just get it all out to someone that wasn't emotionally attached, that could validate that and just kind of give me some pointers. And grief is hard. It's unexpected. I don't know what I expected, but how I was grieving was, I don't know, I thought was wrong almost, or was beating myself up about it, which I don't understand why. Like, if we had a friend next to us that was going through what we were going through, we would never be hard on them or critical of them. But he did give me an exercise once in one of those sessions of, like, here's this stack of papers. I want you to write on this paper everything you say to yourself that you would never say to someone else. And I remember just being like, oh, well, there's not enough papers on there. Like, that's whoa. And so I didn't even have to actually do it and write the things. That was the turning point of just like, whoa, I'm being so, like, unfair and mean to myself, essentially. And I don't even know really why, other than just, I guess, being self-critical and then grief and just, like, why am I not able to function and move on, essentially. And I guess not even move on, like, move past it or get over it, but just do something. Find purpose again, find value. But it was so hard when everything paled in comparison to the value and purpose of Auni and being a mom to her. And so, and with SMA, I also didn't mention it's genetic. So it's a recessive genetic disease. And so it affected our family planning. And so as far as future kids, we didn't know what that meant to have more children. If we were going to try it again and risk it, do adoption, do IVF. And so that was like a whole other avenue that also prevented, like, I couldn't jump into motherhood again really quickly after, if that makes sense.
So it's not like you stopped becoming a mom because you had Auni, right?
Correct.
But were there any feelings of like, I was a mom with a baby here and now I don't have my baby, so what am I mothering? Or I'm a guy, so I don't understand, but
yes, I mean, losing, and Dal too, I mean, losing our parental responsibility and like what a treasure and blessing that is. And it's so important. Like, now you've experienced this love and this role and this new thing, right? Like, I don't know, a parent to a child love is so different. It's its own thing. Mm-hmm. And so to lose that was so difficult for both of us, of just like, it threw us both for a loop of just like, I don't know, like, we want that back, you know, but also don't know exactly how and when that's going to happen.
And every child requires sacrifice, you know, but there is that child, right, that has those medical needs that you went, like, you fought for, right? Like, you gave everything you had, you know, to be able to be with that child and to help them and to support them, and then to have that taken away. I'm curious, how was your relationship with God? Like, how were you and him doing through that experience?
Yeah, I would say probably distant or like confused, maybe. I was actively trying to do everything I could. I mean, and he had never led me astray, nor the Savior, during everything, right? Like, when we prayed for those intense moments for guidance or the best thing to do, he always was there. Yeah. And it's not like I felt like he wasn't there, but it almost felt like, is this ever going to end? Like, where are you? Do you see my efforts? I'm not seeing the results of those or the blessings of those. Like, when is this going to get lighter? Or where do I go from here? You know, just kind of the dark, lonely moments of just like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And like, where are you? What am I missing? What am I not doing? Kind of. In
a tunnel and no light at the end.
That's what it felt like, yeah. And you're just like, I'm actively trying to find my way there, even if it's just a glimmer that I know I'm heading in the right direction, you know, and I'll eventually reach more light. But it definitely was heavy and lonely.
You talked about prayer being, you know, vital in Auni coming into this world, and then prayer being vital as she left this world. Talk about prayer after she passed away, and what role did that play, or what moments did you have with prayer at that point?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's no like specific memories during that time. I mean, I think it was a constant pleading. It was a never-ending prayer.
Yeah, exactly.
That like, but there were no specific moments during that window that I can pinpoint, I guess. But I think they were slowly answered, just with little things that maybe I didn't expect, right? Like people in my life, or the little things of like when it's time to go back to school. It finally gave me something to do, people to connect with, and kind of those type of things. And having a job, like, it kind of was that distraction, because I mean, Dal had that immediately, right? Like, I mean, someone had to pay the bills, he had to go to work, but it was, he got to go out and do something, take care of responsibilities, be out in nature on the beautiful golf course. Like, that was very like healing for him to have that. And so I think I was able to slowly find that in some snippets. Yeah. And I think those hindsight were the answers to the prayers, you know what I mean? Of me just being like, help me find purpose again. And he, you know, eventually led me there. But it was just slow little steps to build that, essentially. I don't know. Yeah. That's a part that's just like, maybe I've kind of blacked it out of my memory. It's a little bit blurry, because I think that was definitely the roughest, loneliest section. And I did spend a lot of time alone in that time. Yeah. But I would go to my sisters a lot and go elsewhere and just to be away from home. I think I stayed busy with friends and just doing who knows what, anything but being home and just sitting in my sadness and grief and
a black box of time where it's like, how did you get through it? I don't know. I hardly remember being there.
Like one day at a time. I'm not sure.
Constant fog and trying to deal with that.
For sure.
I'm curious. I know we kind of had a spoiler alert on this, because you told us you do have other kids at the beginning. Could you tell us a little more about that process and your decision? How did that work for you guys?
For sure. It was a huge blessing that it kind of happened naturally. We didn't have to like kind of go out of our way. We had been prayerful about it and kind of felt best about moving forward with IVF, which also felt intimidating and unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had no idea what the world was with IVF, but I had gone up. So I had mentioned previously I had some like anatomical kind of issues with my uterus and things, and so obviously while Auni was there, it was just like I'm 3 back or like burners back, you know. And so after she passed away and things kind of settled, I finally was like I probably should go to the doctor and maybe see if there's anything we can do there. So my OBGYN recommended or referred me up to a doctor up in Salt Lake, Dr. Duray, and she is amazing. But it ended up being kind of a one-all like appointment. So I was going in just to see if we could fix things with surgery, and that led to also IVF. So in order to be a candidate for IVF, I would have to have the surgery anyway, and she would be able to be a part of all of that. So it kind of led into the initial, like, this is what it looks like. You're a great age, because I was very young, and we could get this surgery done and get you in a spot that you could go and do that. So it kind of just like naturally occurred from that first appointment. And it was a lot of sacrifice and a lot of pinching and saving. And there was a program that existed back then that was able to help a little bit with part of it. But on our meager income, we scrimped and saved as much as we could, and were able to do that first round, and only round that I've done so far as the egg retrieval and everything, and got our embryos that are now our beautiful children. So with that, we had 3 viable embryos. And what I didn't realize, because obviously we went in very naive and didn't know, with genetic testing of the embryos, it comes back with the chromosomes like XX or XY, so they know the gender of them with the genetic testing. And so we didn't know that until the lady on the phone said, do you want us to mask the genders, or would you like to know? And me and Dal didn't know that was a thing. But we're just like, well, I might as well know, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. So we picked the embryo that is now Rook, because it was just the best quality and would, just made sense for that to just be the embryo that we picked first. And so here came Rook into the world, and he's so healthy and strong and wild and crazy, which was such a blessing. But yeah, from the moment he was born, he's 0 or 100. There's no in between. He's so fun, and also as a baby was so hard, and a toddler, like just so strong. There's probably multiple times leaving a grocery store, he didn't want to be buckled in a seatbelt, that someone thought I was like abducting a child because I was trying to like force him into his car seat. But it was just like every appointment and everything, every test, you'd go and just kind of waiting for the shoe to drop. But he was off the charts, healthy and strong in all the ways. Like there was just never a question. And so that was a huge blessing that way. And then we had an embryo in between that we transferred that didn't transfer successfully. And the remaining 2 were a boy and a girl. And I've always wanted to be surprised at birth. And I just didn't know if that would ever work for us, considering our family planning situation. And so the clinic chose when we had the 2 after Rook, they had their process. They said that they kind of like do the luck of the draw and picked one. And so then when we ended up transferring that final one, I didn't know the gender of it until birth. And so that was very fun, because I was convinced it was a boy. And so when Lo was born, it was just like so fun to just have like another little girl, just like Auni's little sister. So that was very special that way.
So awesome. Thank you for sharing. What a miracle. Yeah. What a miracle. And that you got to see that, and that they're both healthy and strong, and that it worked, right? Like that doing it that way made a difference. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Any last things you want to share about prayer before we...
Yeah, I feel like I may have forgotten something maybe.
And you shared such wonderful experiences with prayer along the way.
Yes.
As well.
I guess the main thing, like, prayer was my lifeline from the moment of wanting, moving forward with our family planning until, current day. It is just everything. But through that, it carried us, not only our prayers to him, but other people's prayers on our behalf. Like, that's one thing that also always makes me so emotional, was just how good the world is, and just feeling the love and the service and what people did for our family. Like, being on the receiving end of such kind and generous acts opens your eyes of how you can best serve going forward and pay that service forward. There's someone that anonymously paid for Auni's plot at the cemetery, and we didn't know that until we received a refund check from the city. Mm-hmm. And I would never have thought to go do that for someone, Yeah. And now we can pay that forward, and just to things that were dropped up on our doorstep. I mean, she was diagnosed, and then just word of mouth. I hadn't even kind of let everyone know, and multiple fundraisers were put together immediately, just to help with the cost of her medical stuff. And so we never had to worry about any of the adaptions for her wheelchair or her, just all of the different things, a ramp for our house when we moved, for her wheelchair, and just all those things that added financial burden for things you need just wasn't there, because we just had this community that helped provide that. And that's something I will never not be so grateful for. But I guess the main thing was just prayer was such a lifeline, because it was just, he was the one person that knew. He is the one person who knows. Yeah. He knows what's going on, how everyone's feeling, what the ultimate picture is, and what needs to occur. And so it's just, when I'm making this decision for my daughter on behalf of her life and comfort, I don't know. She can't tell me. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And he knows. Yeah. He's the one person that knows what I should do. Yeah. And he always was there and always provided that guidance to us.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about that moment with your husband when he came to you and said, I need you, you know what I mean, in that moment, and how we got to do that too, right? That he's there. We got to go, we got to say, I need you. I can't do this alone. And he'll come and he'll be there for us. And 100%. And I was just thinking, I mentioned that this week it's been a blessing to have this on my mind, because I have a daughter who's kind of struggling, going through some things, and there was the point where I was like, what do I do? How do I help her? She's struggling, and now I'm struggling because she's struggling. And I was just like, why not go to him? And it just came to my mind, that's what we're talking about this week. That's what we're thinking about. Go to him. And sometimes with my pride and my and everything I'm going through, and I think I can figure it all out on my own, but I went to him, and then my thought that came to mind was, tell her to come to me too, and so that's what you're doing with us today, is go to him, and then tell others to go to him too, and he'll be there. And I know that. And so thank you for that reminder. To me, it's such a simple thing that I think sometimes we overlook it, and don't use that blessing that we have of prayer. So thanks so much.
Yes.
Well, Caitlin, as you consider your experience with grief, what do you now believe about Jesus Christ?
So much. Sorry. That's one thing that will always just straight to the heart. Mm-hmm. The Savior is so near and dear to me. He's everything. He's the answer always, to everything. He will come to us when we need him most. He will come to us in any state, in any place, regardless of how we're feeling. We could be so mad at him, at God, at life, at whoever. We can be confused. We can be sad. We can be heartbroken. All the things, he'll show up for us. A perfect example is when we were in that ICU stay, those 2 weeks with Auni. We did sneak away for 1 hour. Both of us at the same time. Was the first time we left the room. We went to the sacrament meeting there in the hospital, which is a rough place to be. There was a boy there that kind of stood up and bore his testimony, and he'd never left the hospital. He had just stayed there that whole time, and it's just a reminder of this world that you don't know you exist until you're all the way there. But I was sitting in that room and just feeling like I've given everything. I'm on my absolutely last straw. I can't do this. I have nothing left to give. How am I going to do this? I can't do it. And I literally felt the weight of the Savior's arm around my shoulder. He was right there next to me, and just heard the words you can do this because I'm here to help you. And nothing changed. She didn't turn the corner right away when I left that room. But when I walked out of that room, I did know, I can do this somehow. It's gonna work out. And somehow I did. We pushed through. She turned the corner, but I've never forgotten that. Like, he knew that I was on the brink, that I was there, I was at my max, and needed that push and that reassurance and that love. He's validating. He loves us. He knows us. And he will always, always be there for us. And I've also had another experience where it was kind of the opposite, where I was in a really dark time and I was exhausting all the options I could think of in my head, doing my part. I'm exercising my faith. I'm trying to do my part. And I had just parked. I had gone on a drive and I had just parked. And I had taken it's like conference talks that are printed out. And I just flipped open the page. And it turned to the talk titled "The Answer is Jesus" by Elder Ryan K. Olson from October 2022 General Conference. And in that moment, it was, I'm exhausting all options, but I didn't turn to Jesus. I'm missing the most important piece. So I'm showing my faith by action. So I think with earthly things, but I didn't turn to him. That was like the piece that was missing. And there's a quote in there from that talk that says, "No matter how difficult or confusing the challenges may be, you can always remember that the answer is simple. It is always Jesus." So that is so true. And he will always be there. That is something I know so sure to my core that I can never disregard. Like, he will always be there. And sometimes he answers our prayers directly to us, and sometimes he does it through unexpected avenues. People on this side of the veil, on the other side of the veil, through other earthly helps like therapy, and just other unexpected things that maybe we weren't expecting. But I think that's the hardest thing sometimes is, like you said, to finally just kind of swallow our pride and turn to him, but also with faith of, I will do what you tell me to do with that, which is also the other part of that is so difficult, especially because sometimes it's something that's so out of our comfort zone that he tells us to do that we're just like, but I trust him. He knows. He can see better than me. He knows the roadmap, the why, the how everyone's feeling. He's the best source. So he is a perfectly loving, validating best friend and brother to all of us. And I just appreciate him so much.
So good. Thank you. This has been insightful, and it was so good to get to know Auni a little bit and you better and to hear your testimony. So thanks for sharing with us.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This is so special.
Thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their story of hope. If you know someone who might be blessed by hearing this message, please share it with them. We would love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review, and comment on our podcast so others can find it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as join our Grief and Beliefs Facebook group. Thank you to our sponsor, High Five Live Tours, where fun and joy meet on inspiring travel experiences. Special thanks to our producer, Misty Lynn Howard. Check out her history podcast called Faith Ignited. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.